what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy it.
Updating you on the college football's initial CFP ranking, LSU coming in at number 14. A lot of people are going to take this and be like, all right, what's the path for LSU to find their way back? There's still a lot of football to be played out there. And Taylor, you were mentioning potentially a way that the SEC gets left out of the college football playoff.
Yeah, they do, because we were looking at the rankings, and you got Georgia sitting there. But let's say LSU runs the table, but then they beat Georgia in the SEC championship. The winner of Ohio State, Michigan, you got to believe is going to go. If Florida State stays undefeated, they're going to go. The winner of Washington-Oregon rematch is going to go. And then, if there's a one-loss Texas who has wins over Alabama and Oklahoma, and they're a one-loss Big 12 champ, I imagine they would go over Georgia as well. So, there's a way that the SEC could get left out if LSU does run the table.
Yeah, and some of it depends on, like, if you're Texas. Oklahoma needs to continue to win out. You need to face them with only one loss, because if they lose in Bedlam this weekend, then, that loss is going to look different. And so there's a lot of different ways that it certainly could play out. Of the top four teams, though, again, Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, and Florida State, which one do we think has the most likely chance to be in the college football playoff undefeated?
I would go Florida State. There's not a ton left on their schedule. The ACC's down anyways this year. Riley Leonard's still banged up at Duke. Clemson's not what we thought they were going to be, and they've already played both those teams anyway, so I think it's Florida State.
Yeah, I agree. They finished the season at Pitt versus Miami versus North Alabama, and then at Florida. That's a pretty favorable schedule.
It is. I think it is. There could be some tricky games, and Louisville in the ACC championship game, if they continue to win, that could be certainly a situation where Florida State, because Florida State, although they do feel like the most likely to stay undefeated, they also feel like the most likely to have to be undefeated because of what the ACC is. Now, they have the win over LSU. That looks like it's still going to hold up. The Clemson win, well, that's going the other way, certainly 2-4 in conference play. Duke without a healthy Riley Leonard, right, that win's not going to probably hold up as much as it would. So it does feel like Florida State's the best of both worlds. Yes, they have a likely chance to go undefeated, but also they can't afford a loss. They're out.
Yeah,
it almost feels like if they have a loss.
For sure, even with the win against LSU.
So as we're looking at this initial CFP ranking, anything else before we move on, jump out to y'all?
The fact that...
What about Ole Miss beating over Penn State?
Yeah, that's one that jumps out to me. Also, Ole Miss being below Missouri. Look, we've talked about Missouri a lot. Missouri's got some big wins. I know Ole Miss has looked good, but I know they talk about eye test, and I don't like the eye test because I think it's just such like a opinion. It's like, oh, well, I think this team's better. But if that's something they really go by, eye test Missouri's been a little bit more impressive than Ole Miss.
Yeah, Missouri's been good, man. I'm curious to watch them against Georgia. I don't think they necessarily win the game, but I think they could be really frisky and end up with a really good bowl destination by the end of the season.
But that's one of those teams where it's like the LSU game may have been a factor in that because LSU lost to Ole Miss head-to-head. Missouri lost to LSU, and Ole Miss beats LSU. So, maybe that was a deciding factor.
Yeah, it certainly could be. And again, this initial CFP ranking is always pretty funny because of the way it ends up and where all these teams end up. But Ohio State getting that number one nod, no real surprise there. And we're about to find out certainly there in the Big Ten. It starts a little bit. It started with Penn State, Ohio State. You've got Penn State, Maryland, although that's lost a little bit because Maryland loses to Northwestern. But you're about to have Michigan play all three of those teams there in the East, and it certainly could get interesting. Now, LSU, who comes in at number 14, Alabama at number 8. It doesn't feel like a 14 versus 8 game we had this weekend in Tuscaloosa. It feels much bigger than that. And you could say, well, obviously, it's LSU and Alabama. It's always going to feel like that. And, yes, there is some portion of that, but I think for different reasons. For Alabama, it's, okay, well, they had an early season loss to Texas. They certainly didn't look good against South Florida. They've had some time. Arkansas, they didn't look good. But at the end of the day, they're winning games. And so for Alabama, in their perspective, they're trying to, which seems crazy, kind of earn a lot of respect, saying, hey, no, we're still Alabama. It might not look like it's looked in our dominant seasons, but we still have every opportunity because they do. Alabama's certainly going to get that benefit of the doubt if it comes down to it. If they keep winning games, if they get to Atlanta, if they play Georgia in an SEC championship game and they get that victory, make no mistake about it, Alabama will get the benefit of the doubt because, look, they've been a standard of college football, so it makes sense. And then, LSU in that game last year, losing the way you did, LSU storms the field, you lose in overtime. That's something that Alabama, obviously, they don't want that to happen again. They don't lose in back-to-back years to the same team, certainly to the same starting quarterback, right? Outside of Jordan Jefferson, who by a technicality doesn't get this nod. We told you yesterday, Drew Brees at Purdue when Coach Saban was at Michigan State, the last starting quarterback to beat Nick Saban in back-to-back years. It doesn't happen very often. So all of those things put together for Alabama. And then for LSU, it's a Bama game, right? It is a situation a year ago. Remember how that felt like. And because Alabama has put themselves as the standard, a pillar, whatever you want to say, of college football, I mean, they're the only school in the last 2 decades that has more national championships than you. And they've got a lot of them, right? So they are standing in your way. And you want to get to a point with Brian Kelly where you are playing this game every single year with the confidence that you are going to go win that game. There's a long time that confidence went away, even if you're being true to yourself. Purple and gold glasses, the whole deal. Like, this was a game that you're like, oh, man, I don't know. We're going to play our best. Well, last year proved that you can go out there and you can win this game. You can go toe-to-toe with the Heisman Trophy winning Bryce Young. You can go toe-to-toe with the number 3 overall pick, Will Anderson, and you can be successful in this game. And, in fact, you can win this game. So there's a different confidence level for LSU. So, yes, they're 14, but it can mean so much to where this program continues to grow to with a victory on the road in Tuscaloosa. And you've been more successful for whatever reason in this series on the road. So, yeah, it's going to be loud. It's going to be an environment that is not comfortable, but it's an environment that you've had success in, including the last time you went there when you were a bad football team. You were not a great football team, right? Your coach had already been let go, who was still coaching the game, but like decisions had already been made. And you went in there and you threw a pass into the end zone with a chance to take down Alabama, right? So you have lived up, you've played up to this game in recent memory, and that's what you have to do in this contest. And you're going to have advantages. You're going to have the better quarterback here. And I think Milroe's is a really good player. I think he does a lot of good things for that team. He fits what they need. Jaden Daniels is better, right? You've got the receiver matchup. I would say you have the offensive line and running back matchup. So offensively, you're going to have some advantages. We all know what this game's going to come down to. It's going to come down, though, can you get the stops? And you're going to be playing young football players. We've heard sound from Brian Kelly over the last couple of days and weeks and who you're going to have available. But you don't have to be perfect. That's the thing that this LSU team has to realize. You do not have to be perfect. You don't have to score a touchdown on every single drive, right? You don't have to hold Alabama to 14 points on defense. That's not what this game has to be. You just have to go out there and do the things that you do really well 80% of the time, which is play a high level of offense. And then on defense, get enough stops to be able to be competitive in this game.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.